town board meeting on Monday, January 28th at 6:03 p.m. We'll go through a roll call. Mike Woods. Here. Mark Strobel. Here. Andy Peters. Here. Dean Culberson. Here. And Jack Anderson's here. We'll stand and face the flag for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since there's no public hearings, we'll move forward past items 3. There's no presentations for item 4. Is there anybody here wishing to speak public comment forum on a topic that's not on the agenda? Mr. Ryan, I see you're signed up for the sports complex, so if you want to say something, we'll wait till that agenda topic. So is there anybody else wishing to speak? Since there's not, I'll make a motion to close the public comment forum.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Public comment forum section's closed. For our agenda, under the Planning Commission recommendations, we'll go to 6A, consider, discuss, and act on Resolution 08-19. This is the CSM on Mayflower Drive. This was discussed just previously at the Planning Commission. Is there any questions, comments, or a motion?
Make a motion to approve resolution 08-19.
Second.
Motion's been given to approve with a second. Questions or comments? Since there's no questions or comments, let's go forward with the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6A is approved for Resolution 08-19. 6B, consider, discuss, and act on Resolution 04-19. This is rezoning parcel 11004540 from Planned Commercial District to Business Park District. Any questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 04-19.
I'll second that.
Andy's given the motion, Dean the second. Any questions or comments? Not hearing any, so we'll go forward with our vote again. This is to approve Resolution 04-19, item 6B. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries a vote of 4-1. 6B is approved. Item 7, there's no unfinished business. Moves us to 8, new business. The sports complex, phasing and estimate with probable costs.
Okay, you should have received in your email today some updated information that's now included in the packet as it relates to the sports complex. Essentially, the town board approved a concept plan a couple months back for the proposed improvements for the sports complex. And since that time, Rettler Corporation has put together kind of a phasing plan based on conversations they have had with staff internally, and then also some of the user groups and kind of the preferred, I guess, timeline for construction. So ultimately what we're looking at is 8 phases of construction. The first phase would encompass basically 2 multi-purpose fields, athletic fields, primarily for soccer. Those full-size fields could get converted into ultimately 4 mid-level fields, so kind of that U10 or under size fields. So certainly would accommodate the current field space that is currently at the sports complex. In addition to that, the southern parking lot would be included in phase 1, as well as portions of what we call the central lot. And then also the Fox Cities United Soccer Club is looking at constructing an indoor practice facility. This is not a facility that would be used for games, but rather it's a relatively smaller facility, about 2,000 square feet, that would be used for their purposes to conduct a variety of different training sessions for their players. Beyond that, moving up into phase 2, we add some additional parking areas and some additional soccer fields. Phase 3 incorporates some fields for baseball and softball purposes, as well as the beginning of the northern lot. Phase 4 and Phase 5 are relatively able to be converted one or the other based on user need or demand or interest. So whether baseball comes in with another 2 fields or soccer user groups come in with another 2 fields, those 2 kind of phases are transferable between them. Phase 7 includes areas outside of the defined athletic facilities that would be kind of reserved for areas for preservation and naturalization. So in this very far northern portion of the property, we'd be looking at creating a wetland prairie restoration and some stormwater facilities, and then also along the fringes, both east and western side of the property. These areas would be naturalized areas, set to prairie, kind of think of like an oak savanna, if you will, with some nature trails that basically border the entire park facility. Phase 6 is kind of more of that community area or community space. As part of that concept plan, the Park Commission and Town Board reviewed, we have a large play area, so a large play structure for youth ages 2+, as well as a splash pad. So again, that's kind of play structures with different interactive water features, some sand volleyball, and then a bathhouse and ultimately a swimming pond. Be a little bit smaller than the one found at Plowman Park and very similar to the one that's constructed in the village of Ashwaubenon at Ashwaubomay Park. Basically a man-made pond. It's filled each year for swimming season. The water is actually treated, much like a swimming pool, albeit not to the same level of chlorine, but it is a treated water facility for swimming and other aquatic recreation. And then phase 8 kind of rounds out the park facility that provides area for an improved maintenance facility for park operations. With this phasing plan, you will receive 2 cost estimates of probable cost. The first one was related to all the improvements at the site. Ultimately, this is kind of a worst case scenario. You want the best of the best. Here's what it's going to cost. Much of the estimated probable costs are inflated to reflect the fact that the town would likely not construct the facility all in 1 year, in particular in 2020. But over a period of time, so these costs have been inflated to affect that difference year over year for improvements. You can see based on the total quantities and cost, this overall park, if it were built out at a very high level, we're looking at close to $19 million. And basically that includes total cost of construction. That includes a rather healthy contingency, and then also includes elements related to designing, engineering, bidding, and contracting construction. Beyond that full project cost estimate, we broke down what those costs would be if we were to do it in phases. And so you have a rather lengthy document here related to the different phases that are encompassed within the plan. The first phase, as I mentioned again, that southern parking lot, 2 athletic fields, and the indoor sports facility, that's roughly 16.6 acres in area. And the overall estimated cost for that, if I scroll down, was identified as, I think it was just under 3 million, or just over 3 million, so 3.1 million. One thing I want to point out in phase 1 is that those costs do not include the cost to purchase and construct the indoor sports facility. Those costs would be borne by the user group, and it's our understanding that Fox Cities United is prepared to provide that indoor space. At previous meetings, we discussed with the town board if this was agreeable to incorporate this indoor space. Essentially, we would lease the land back to Fox Cities United, and there would be a long-term lease, and they would operate and maintain the facility under this kind of land lease agreement, if you will. There are other communities that have had these arrangements in the past. City of Kaukauna has done similar activities, City of Eau Claire, and I think the Village of Harrison is also entertaining these types of arrangements with user groups. So it's certainly a possibility, but I want to point out again that 3.1 million estimated probable cost for phase 1 does not include the cost of constructing that indoor facility. That's strictly related to earthwork, hard surface areas such as parking lots and sidewalks, construction of the athletic facilities, so grading, if you will, and amending soils if necessary, that sort of thing. And then each of those cost breakdowns for the next few phases are relatively consistent with each other. I'll just kind of get to the bottom line here just to give you that breakdown for all phases of construction. Get to it so that you can get it on the screen and everyone can see it. Pardon me, right here. This is really finicky, so I apologize because I'm trying to get it visible for the public. It's not working for me. Okay. So again, phase 1, we're roughly at 3.1 million. Phase 2 is roughly at 3.4. Phase 3, we're looking at what, 2.8? Is that the number you guys see over there? Yep. Phase 4, we're at 2.7. Phase 5 is at 1.5 million. Phase 6 is again 3.3. Phase 7 is 1.4-ish, right? Yep. And then the final phase is 1.2? Yep. Okay. So again, for an all-encompassing total of 19.7 million all told over the course of that period of time. So again, the board had asked at a prior meeting when we presented the concept plan prior to formally adopting and approving the master plan. The idea was to identify what those probable costs were going to be and what contribution the town would make then in furthering the development of that site. So now you have the information, you have kind of an idea of how you would phase the construction and development of that site. We have a pretty solid and very, I think, conservative number for cost of construction. These numbers are high, so I think there are certainly elements within the park plan that could be eliminated or modified to reduce those costs. But at this point, what we're looking for is direction from the town board. Fox Cities United is looking for direction as far as what contribution the town would make in helping further the development of the site, and then what we would expect the user groups to contribute to help develop the site as well. So with that, I'll kind of close the introductory portion of the project here, or this agenda item, and then certainly answer any questions that you might have on this project.
Thanks, Joel. Is there any questions or comments from the board? My first question, Joel, is that you've got these phases numbered. Is that kind of the priority? If we were to truly do these over 8 different time periods, is that the priority 1 through 8? The town staff feels that this should be done.
In review of it, I don't know that the phases necessarily are the order of which they should be done. I'll give you an example. Phase 1 obviously is important because it provides the entrance into the facility and provides an initial parking area. But let's say phase 6, for example, is a very high priority for the community to provide the swimming areas. That is an area that could easily be accomplished before phases 2 through 6 or 2 through 5 are completed. Right. If you have, let's say baseball becomes more united in developing their portion of the park, you can certainly exclude some of the soccer fields. The parking areas are going to be necessary to support baseball either way. So you can interchange certain aspects of the park. Obviously, the accessory elements, the parking is going to be required regardless of the density of the fields. Okay.
I just asked that because I agree with you that phase 1 is important because it's the entrance to the park. Really get things kicked off and rolling. I just know GYS could use some help with the field issues that they have and trying to get things scheduled, especially with the larger field that they use for the older kids, and getting that put in place would be nice. That this is not something that like any of us thought was going to be free by any means, but this is pretty hefty price tag on it. So I've spoken all along that we need to be considering how we're going to finance this, and has the town staff talked about any options that we could go forward with as a town board or as a community as a whole?
I think what we would look from the town board standpoint is, let's just make the assumption that the overall cost to develop the site really is $20 million. Even if we were to eliminate a substantial portion of the elements within the site, we're still talking a cost that is going to exceed $10 to $12 million. So what is that kind of development threshold that the town board has for developing a site like this? And what portion of that, that estimated cost should be funded through some type of private development, whether that's individual user groups or through some type of fundraising initiative? I think it's certainly reasonable for the town to consider utilizing fundraising efforts to develop a facility of this nature. So what is that threshold? In many communities, what you'll see are these athletic facilities have to be paid for by the user groups that are going to use them. So they'll lead the charge in developing a fundraising campaign to support those things. The towns or villages or cities, they'll contribute to the accessory elements, parking, roadways, maybe trails and network features or those community aspects. So ultimately what I think what we would want to do is either identify the areas that private user groups need to develop and support through fundraising, and what portion the town is willing to contribute, and then at what percentage should that come from private fundraised dollars. So I think many cases communities will say, we'll contribute up to so much in money to develop this site through tax dollars or borrowing proceeds. The rest of that has to come from the user groups or fundraised dollars. And then that's kind of the threshold that they work off of.
So you guys are looking for a direction from the town board and how to move forward with this development. So for me, I think it's a phenomenal design, and everything that's been put into this, it would be incredible to have. I'd hate to have to cut any of it out, but there's a dollar figure on all of it. So we need to come up with a plan how this is going to be financed, and it's tough to do just tonight. I think that this warrants a full discussion on what are the options out there, all the way from having the user groups fund these fully, which would be a tremendous burden on the user groups, from the soccer club, GYS, the YMCA are different groups that have talked about being a part of this, and just others that are in general just interested in having more green space. That's a lot. But then the opposite of that would be asking the town to fund this fully, and to do that, we don't have this in our capital improvement plan, our 5-year outlook, so we'd be looking at going to possibly a referendum for this and seeing how people feel. So I think there's more work that needs to be done than making a decision tonight on what we can do with this, especially from a financial standpoint. I'd like to get a feel for how the community feels about this. I don't know the best way to go about doing that, whether that's some type of survey or whatever. I don't know if this group of 5 people on the town board can do that alone. I think we need to know how our community feels before we push forward with something like this. This is a big deal. This is, I don't know, 3 times the cost of our fire safety building. So yeah, building that out in phases I think is a must-have, and I agree with phase 1 is the first because it's the entrance. Beyond that, I think we need to talk with some of the user groups on what should come next and discover that as time progresses. But I do think that some of the burden on this should come from the groups that are going to be using it. I do appreciate the fact that the soccer club is going to be putting up the building, probably paying for the cost of all the utility hookups and everything else for that building. So I think that's a great opportunity for not only the soccer club, but also for the Greenville as a community to have a facility like that right here in town. So I don't know what else you're looking for, and maybe some of the other board members want to speak.
Jack, we're moving forward on funding of that indoor facility. It's actually 14,000 square feet. The vestibule is 2,000 square feet, and the playing field will be 12,000 square feet. We have or 14,000 for the playing field. It's more than 2,000. But we do have a steel building on reserve, and we have been working with the general contractor on the building plans, but we need approval to put it somewhere. Obviously, we would rent this space out to GYS at a more affordable price that they can get other facilities at. And basically, we're a nonprofit that we don't need to turn a profit like Players Choice, which is no longer range, so significantly more affordable for the other sports clubs, including lacrosse in Appleton, and other
Do you have a,
sports.
with the people that are holding the building for you, do you have any type of deadline, timetable?
We have a more important deadline, so we have a place indoor next winter.
Do you have anything with the people that are holding the building?
No, we put a deposit down, and we would likely lose that money if we don't buy the building.
Right.
It's $5,000, we knew it was a risk. We need 10% of the building cost. Or is it 10, how much to put it in production? 25?
Yeah, it's about.
We need another 25,000 to put it in production.
Yeah.
But without a place to put it,
What's the,
what's the point?
right,
I will say we have started our fundraising campaign. We don't have hard numbers or paper signed commitments, but I would guess that we're probably around that 10% of our goal, give or
Maybe a
take,
little more.
maybe a little bit more, and our goal is $1 million. That's our estimate for the cost of the building installed in place with turf, toilets, and electricity and lights.
okay.
And there is still a basement in the plan for that.
So one thing that, just a thought that came to my head, is that phase one is, could there be a phase 1A and phase 1B where the indoor facility would be 1A with the entrance to the park, being part of the construction of that parking lot? 1B would be the 2 soccer fields that are included in that. Would that, is that a possibility, or is there a reason why that's all included in one as a whole? Is it because of the earthworks that need to happen, or?
Yeah, that's part of it. I think when you look at this here, you can kind of see the existing entrance. This is a non-permitted entrance onto a state highway. So in order to get approved permitted access, we would need to relocate that per our plan here. So that's one component of it. This driveway comes right through the facility currently as it sits. So we'd have to do some reconfiguration. We would lose some field space. So Fox Cities would lose fields as a result of the location of this building in its planned state. There may be some playing surface here that could be saved, but ultimately with the amount of hard surface that we would be creating, whether it's graveled or paved parking, we would need to include some stormwater management facilities to support that as well. So a lot of the infrastructure that has to go in to support this area is incorporated in that entire phase one.
Yeah, so if you, and to your point, if you do phase one all as a whole, instead of separating it into 2 pieces, then the soccer club would still have 2 fields that they could utilize outdoor. Whereas if you didn't do that, you're probably losing your outdoor facility.
I mean, realistically, we could use the space in the back that we've got and rearrange things, we could. You know, if we just had one and didn't put the second field, I mean, it's all, it can all be worked around as long as.
Right.
We can figure it out. Like, if it needed to be broke down into different phases,
Right.
then we can figure it out. I mean, it would be great to at least have the one, but.
All right, thank you. The rest of you guys are pretty quiet. Maybe I took the words out of your mouth, that's
No, you
why.
I think it's, the overall plan, I like it. Whether it's a phase 1A and 1B, I think we can determine that. But I think it's also important that this group in the town and the soccer club sit down here pretty quick and talk, because it's going to affect both you people what happens probably this year already with your timelines. So probably we should have a meeting pretty quick with both groups and get some of this sorted out. Because I assume that the soccer club's already got plans for next year, and if we're going to take a field away, they're not going to be happy. So we need to tell them that pretty quick.
To get indoor space, Renee has worked through that.
Okay.
But and we have talked to Joel and Tony quite a bit.
Well, I suspect you have. It's just that we need to be talking with the soccer club also.
So are you talking about having a special meeting, specialized, focused meeting that we'd just be talking about the different phases, the financing behind this? What are the options or opportunities to get assistance in financing this, whether it's
You took the words out of my
a
mouth.
grant or referendum? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I guess I'll send in that direction, yes.
I was kind of going in that direction myself, so is there any other words from the rest of the board?
I guess the big key is the $3 million figure.
For phase one, you mean?
Yeah. That's gonna be the big stumbling block.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot to be talked about in this, and I don't know if Mike or Mark, if you have anything to say.
I got one other question, Jack.
I'll let Dean go first.
What
You guys
is
gather your thoughts.
the discussion been with the DOT so far in that entrance? Are we moving forward with that? Have we heard anything back from them?
Yes, they really don't have too much for concerns. They are looking forward to us kind of creating a CSM to get those parcels cleaned up.
Okay.
Because, you know, there's kind of shared access and stuff like that, and they really haven't voiced much of a concern. We know what they're gonna require. Nothing's really catching us off guard. They didn't have any concerns with our conceptual master plan, so
What do you think is the timeline on that for that entrance? Will it be
for
ready?
their approval, I would say about 8 weeks.
Oh,
We have to get the CSM prepared and approved and dedicate the right-of-way. We have to prepare the engineering for the intersection improvements to go along with that. And simultaneously, we'll need to start doing some basic grading plan for the entire site so we can match it in with the intersection improvements. So there's some timing there on our part. We've already employed Cedar to prepare that CSM and the right-of-way dedication. So we hope to bring that back in March, April timeframe.
and construction for the entrance?
That'd all be, I mean, they have not started any sort of the actual engineer design.
Would be 2019 though, right?
And that would all be based, we wouldn't make any improvements to the entrance until there was a commitment to begin phase one.
But it sounds like everything's, what he put first here. Looks like the entrance is integral into doing this. I know we do have an existing entrance there, but that thing is outdated and I don't think it's very safe.
I think the existing entrance will kind of serve as a construction entrance, as they are constructing that facility. Until the indoor facility is completed, and, you know, all pavement's in, I don't really foresee, you know, our final entry to be completed. Because I'd hate to see that we get our right-of-way dedicated, we get our road constructed, and then we just run that, road really hard with heavy traffic to construct the indoor facility. I'd rather see them use the entrance that's there.
I'm not sure what kind of base is on there even. You guys been pounding it for years already, but
It's seen quite a bit of traffic with the sewer and water extension going in. I mean,
okay.
it doesn't hold up perfect, but it holds up.
Mark or Mike?
Just how are we gonna pay for it?
Okay. Mike, any comments? Nope.
No, I'd like to see where we could possibly get a second entrance sometime. I know you're gonna save some right away through here.
Yeah,
But I'm, you know.
the added entrance is when we create this eventual CSM, we're looking at dedication of this area up to this point. And then at some point, we will dedicate right of way here and here as well. So those secondary entrances and exits will eventually come as development allows. This road will eventually connect to Cleary Court. This extension of this road will eventually make its way over to Julius Drive.
So each of those have their unique challenges as well. So Mike, I understand your point. I can see those 4 baseball games getting out at the same time with
Right.
maybe a soccer game going on or 3. And you probably have over 100 cars trying to leave at the same time. It could be, we need to call our deputy and to direct traffic out on Wisconsin for a good 30 minutes.
And the DOT has indicated that they would not allow another entrance or exit on this property. So we did pursue that if we had a secondary exit on the 96. Based on the distances from the proposed entrance back to State Highway 76 and another entrance or exit back over to Julius Drive, the distances were too great. Or not great enough, I should say.
At the intersections, they look for them to be at least 1,000 feet apart.
Yep.
So that's kind of what you see right now, with the 2 entrances at Lyons and then the entrance now at Design on 76. Those are approximately at that 1,000-foot spacing.
So I think it's clear what we're asking for then would be to have a focus meeting that's about how we're going to not only build this out in phases, but how we're gonna, what are the opportunities to try to finance these various phases and all the way to doing them phase by phase, or if the town really is demanding for this to happen, to get all of this done, do they want us to go to a referendum for the full cost of this? that's a big chunk to bite into, so I don't know if that's in anybody's horizon for that to happen, so. Mike, go ahead.
Have you discussed with the DOT possibly a roundabout?
We have not. I know if we were to discuss that, they would expect majority of that expense to be our responsibility, so.
And they don't have any long-term plans for 4 lanes?
Not that I've heard any discussion of.
They'd only be looking for turn lanes here, short term and long term, from what they told us.
So this would be a type B
Correct.
intersection, so there'd be bypass lanes on eastbound traffic, and then there'd be deceleration lanes and acceleration lanes for westbound traffic.
So I just look for that to be in the next few weeks to have something scheduled for that meeting. If you can try to coincide that with another meeting that we might have for a corporation or otherwise, that'd be wonderful. Okay, can I move on to 8B? Okay, 8B is our employee handbook update. This is specific to our holiday policy, section 411. So I believe there's some discrepancy in some of the wording that we wanted to get cleaned up.
Yeah, we wanted to clarify a couple of things. As you know, we adjusted our operating hours to basically go to 4 9-hour days with a 4-hour shift on Friday. Public Works has continued their operating hours, working 8.5 hours plus a 6-hour day on Fridays. Our fire personnel work 5 days a week at 8-hour shifts. Our previous holiday policy had identified that an employee would receive 8 hours of holiday pay for the holidays that were observed. We had some concerns from employees not being able to interpret the rules that you would get paid basically for the amount of time that you normally would have been scheduled to work on those particular holidays. So we added some very specific language to provide examples of how that would work. So essentially, if an employee that works in town hall that would normally work a 9-hour shift, that's an observed holiday, they would get paid 9 hours for the time that they missed. Public Works employees on that same Monday would get 8.5. Fire would get 8. It's all dependent on the amount of hours that you would typically be scheduled on that observed holiday. Fridays would be different. Some would get 4, some would get 6, some would get 8. It just depends on that holiday. The other discrepancy was we have a couple employees that work in Public Works off schedules, meaning someone works a Tuesday through Saturday shift, some people work 4/10s. Same case there for the individual that works 4/10s. If that's an observed holiday, we're closed, they get their 10 hours of pay for that observed rate. For the individual that works Tuesday through Saturday, being that many of our holidays have fallen on Monday, i.e. Memorial Day or Labor Day, that employee would get Tuesday off as their observed holiday, and they would get the hours that they normally would have worked on that Tuesday. To compound the issue with confusion for the employees, we had 2 half-day holidays previously, one on the Friday before Easter, the other on New Year's Eve. We are proposing to eliminate the half-day holidays altogether, and then in compensation for that, issue a 1 floating holiday for the employees that qualify for those half-days. They would be issued in 1-day increments, so you could not take an hour of floating holiday, you'd have to take a full day. If you elect and your supervisor approves your holiday on a Monday, you'd get your 9 hours or your 8.5 or your 8. If you decided you wanted to take your holiday on a Friday, you would just get your 4 or your 6 or your 8, depending on where you work and what your normal schedule would be. Floating holidays would not be able to be carried over. They would not be paid out. You use them or you lose them, and that's it. And so that kind of constitutes the changes within the holiday policy. If the board is in agreement with this and it gets approved, we would institute this beginning January 1 of 2019, seeing that those holidays that we have yet to observe that would be eliminated would be stricken from our schedule of observed holidays.
Any questions or a motion?
I think it's a good idea. I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the update on the employee handbook, please.
Second.
Dean's given the motion to approve, and Mark's given the second. Questions or comments? Since there's none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 8B is approved. 8C, temporary sign code enforcement. Town staff is looking for direction on which way to proceed. We have a number of signs that aren't in compliance with our temporary sign policies. So if this was requested to move forward, we're looking at developing a formal enforcement program, identifying signs that are either not in compliance or are in compliance, and contacting property owners. If they're in compliance, get necessary permits. If they're not in compliance, contact the property owners to get them removed or modify their use. Any idea hour-wise, for just on a broad range, 100 hours?
It's hard to say. Initially, it'll take some time to develop the program, make contact with the property owners, work with them to come into compliance. Once we have that set, moving forward, just keeping up with it.
Yeah.
Just be a maintenance program essentially, and just reminding people and educating people that, hey, just a reminder, permits are required. These are the time frames, these are the requirements. We just want to make you aware of kind of what's out there, because from what I've heard, and we haven't really ever enforced the temporary sign requirements, so it'll be a new process.
Yeah.
So property owners will probably be a little surprised. So we want to tread lightly, but
So you have 45 temporary signs that you've identified, and you said that could be light because it's the winter season.
correct.
You know, just in talking about this, I see a lot more of them myself, and just stuff that's out there. So I would like to move forward with going through a program and contacting those that have these temporary signs, notifying them properly on what they need to do. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree also. It's, to put it bluntly, it's starting to look chunky around here. And if we don't do something now, it's gonna be more difficult in 5 or 10 years, because they've been sitting there all this time. We've never said a word.
Right.
We should have been on top of this. And I think now's the time to do it.
And I think from a staff perspective, we just wanted to make sure that the board was aware that this is gonna ruffle some feathers.
Yep.
We'll tread obviously professionally and courteously, but there are gonna be individuals that have had signs that are considered temporary, but have been in permanence for quite some time.
Yep.
And you may get some negative feedback from these individuals, and just so the board is aware that that is a possibility, and we'll continue to enforce the policy as it's written or the ordinance as it's written, but be advised that we're probably gonna get a little bit of flack for this.
Yeah, I'd rather do it now than wait on it myself. I know that the flack is going to come. I understand that, but if you don't do it now, then 5 years from now, you just have compounded the issue, and it's that much harder to deal with. So I understand there's going to be flack, and if people have issues with it, then I guess they should just come and talk to us instead of just talking behind the back, I guess is the best way to put it. So yes, please go forward. It sounds like it's a consensus from the board to do so. Moves us to 8D, the town newsletter and other communication tools. The town newsletter has become a bit more of an expense than it has been in the past. I believe that fiscal impact on this, I believe it was around $20,000 annually that's spent on this as far as costs. I don't know what the revenues are on it, so I don't know what the net is overall, although I believe that it's about $2,000 a quarter that and negatively that we're actually spending more than we're bringing in on it. So Joel, maybe you can talk about it a little bit more clearly than what you've seen and what you've done in your research for this.
Yeah, we do have obviously our quarterly printed newsletter. It does produce some revenues. The overall annual expense is over about $20,000 annually. The net loss from the operating revenues over the operating expenditures is about $6,000 annually. It fluctuates from year to year based on advertisement revenue, anywhere between probably about $5,500 to about $6,200 annually. As part of the 2019 budget, the board agreed to eliminate the quarterly printed newsletter and kind of go to one, or at least have the opportunity to print one annual newsletter, but the format and the content within that newsletter would need to be drastically reduced or changed to accommodate the $2,500 that is budgeted for that particular item. What we're looking at doing is creating an electronic newsletter that would basically replace the printed copy. That electronic newsletter could be, in theory, sent out quarterly, but what we're proposing to start with is a monthly electronic newsletter where we would provide information that's a little bit more timely and up to date than the printed copy. As you recall, in many cases when that printed copy comes to their mailboxes, they read the first article and it's already a week or two or a month behind from kind of what we're talking about. So with the electronic version, it can certainly be more timely, more effective from that standpoint. And we would look to at least begin it on a monthly basis. We could certainly increase that to weekly or daily if you'd like. Or the information could just be timely based on the need of the particular content. There's a couple different options that we can utilize to do this method. We're proposing to use a company or a firm called MailChimp. You may have heard of them. You may have heard of Constant Contact if you've gotten kind of emails in your inbox. And so both of those options are very good options. MailChimp we felt was a good option to begin with, primarily because it's free for up to the first 2,500 email addresses that subscribe to our account. We can send out up to 12,000 emails a month with no charge. And so we thought that that was a good opportunity to initiate and establish an email database and list of potential individuals interested in receiving the newsletter. Ultimately, what will end up happening is to produce the content. Departments will be responsible for basically creating blog posts, either on our website or some other blog. MailChimp will then pull those blog posts out based on what's called an RSS feed. And then based on a timed schedule and a template that we develop, it'll take those blog posts and send them out via email. And so basically we create the content when it's convenient for us to make the content. And when that information is ready to go out, it'll automatically send out the information. So in many cases, you don't have to recreate the content in order to produce the electronic newsletter.
So for me, I would recommend that the staff go forward with this, going to one newsletter, printed newsletter annually, and at some point we might even need to look at that if that's necessary. Most likely that should happen in April around the time of the town annual meeting. When that's happened in the past, I'd look for some goals within our department heads to have so many articles or blogs that would be done annually so that they've got a commitment to do that. For those that get the newsletter, most of us here do, there's a lot of repeats from quarter to quarter or year to year. It's the same thing over and over again, and a lot of that information should be out on our town's website when it comes to what to look for when you're putting up a fence, a deck, or remodeling your basement, that type of stuff. Some of the important information about when garbage and recycling pickup is, that's in there, but that can very easily be put out on our website and be part of these blogs as well. So I would look for the staff to go forward with this.
Discussion on that. I've talked to a number of people, and they're overwhelmingly thinking we should do the paper quarterly. I asked them, well, we'd have it online available to them. They said they honestly would not go to look for it there. If it's there in the mail, it's there for them to look at as a reference anytime they want. They set it on the counter, it's there. They rip out the garbage thing and hang it on the refrigerator or whatever. They know when the recycling is. Maybe I'm talking to an older group, I don't know, but church, civic groups, I've talked to a lot of people, and overwhelmingly they feel very strongly they want that newsletter where it's there in front of them. It's online.
They
No
understand.
reminder to go look at it. If it's there in front of them, it's there to look at, but they said they think it could be reduced because do we need 3 pages from a dog catcher? Probably not. A lot of things could be condensed, and that would save money.
They are informed then that we're losing money on this. It's not self-sufficient.
Okay, $5,500, $6,000 a year is what we're losing right now. If you cut it back, the size of it, that would eat up some of that. They think it's very important information that they're getting that's laying there in front of them to pick up and look at anytime.
Well, I'm glad they think it's important information because we put a lot of time into putting some of those articles together, including myself. So I appreciate that, Andy.
That's my feeling on it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I got 2 cents worth. I really like this idea, but I think Andy's hit the nail on the head. I don't think a lot of people are gonna like it electronically. I would appreciate it, but they like that paper magazine that they get. It's kind of a magazine. They take it and stick it in the corner and they go back and look at it periodically. Not everybody has, especially the older citizens in this town, probably are not as apt to utilize the, to look it up electronically. But maybe, as long as you're talking about this, we probably don't really need this 12 or 14 page magazine we send out. Maybe just something as simple as a 2-page letter would have all the information they need. That'd be my thought on it.
Well, I think it'd have to be longer so you can still sell advertising for it.
Yeah, but do you need the advertising? You're gonna keep it to 2-3 pages? Put it in an envelope?
Well, it's good
I
for
don't
local
know.
businesses to advertise. That's their connection
Sure.
to the town people too.
This is probably the most discussion we've had on a topic in the 4 years that I've been here. So this is good. This is what should happen. I don't know. I understand. I understand. There's a generation of people that don't even have access to the internet, email. Otherwise, we would have to do something printed and have available at town hall one way or the other for those people that don't have that. And that could be nothing against. That has nothing to do with age. It's just choice on whether you want to have internet or email. So it could be somebody that's a teenager or whatever that has the same boat as somebody that's older that has a choice not to have the email or internet service. So for me, it goes down to the fact that we're losing money on something like this. So if there's ways to get around losing the money and people really like getting that information on a quarterly basis, let's do that. There's some of those articles that seem to carry on and on. Then maybe we need to put a word limit or a page limit on some of these contributors to the newsletter so that it can be more succinct.
Limit the pictures, cut
Right.
it down by a couple pages anyway, but,
So
and I guess my question is gonna be, how are you gonna get the word out on this? Send out a newsletter to tell them they're not gonna get a newsletter?
Pretty
You know,
much.
hopefully they
that
read it.
final newsletter, that first newsletter that we issue this year will basically be kind of a, hey, this is your last newsletter type thing, and subscribe to our electronic copy.
So is there a way that we can go to a more condensed version and come up with some policies for those that contribute to this? That you're limited to so many words and this 1 page or half a page or 2 pages, whatever it is. So get your words down and be more succinct to what you're saying. And the things that are repeat over and over again, I talk about the fence and what we have around for our permitting for fences and building permits for basements and decks. Those seem to be repetitive. And then condense some of the other things down. I do like some of the things that come in there from our county board supervisors as well. I think that's good information that comes in so that you get a perspective as a citizen for beyond the town of Greenville's boundaries. But I don't want to be losing money on something, even though I do know that it's informative and that's important. But if we need to be smarter about how we're doing things, so what do we need to do to be smarter? It'd be cut down the number of pages that are going out, keeping up with the number of advertisements that are really how we try to fund this is through the advertisements that are in there. So any new businesses come into town, definitely try to get them involved with advertising through our newsletter. I don't see that we need to stop doing some of the blogging that's out there. I think that takes advantage of a new form of communication.
Quicker.
I say new, but it's really not that new. It's been around for a long time, but it'd be new to Greenville, and I don't know what else I need to say.
I guess our recommendation would be essentially we can institute the electronic newsletter now. That's something that we can do regardless of whatever the decision is on the printed copy. I think that would help us in disseminating information more clearly, succinctly, and timely to our residents. We can encourage people to sign up for this electronic newsletter, start building a database of individuals interested in receiving the content, create the content, get it out, and then allow us to go back kind of the drawing board. I think we understand that, at least my understanding right now is the board is interested in maintaining a quarterly print newsletter. What that means, whether it's 4 pages, 8 pages, 12 pages, 20 pages, allow us to go back and kind of put together a plan B for how we can maintain a printed four-issue quarterly newsletter,
Right.
and how we can fit that within the budget that we have assigned for it.
Okay. It's good direction. You know, you and I have talked about having a blog for a while, and it's just kind of branching out to our department heads about things that are going on. I think, Michael, you'd have a lot that you could put into a blog as far as community, economic development, things that are going on. Trying to get the word out about properties that are available. Brian, you've got a lot of projects that are going to go on an annual basis that you could be communicating. Tony, it'd be very easy for you to talk about parks. I see posts on Facebook now already about these things, but this would just be another avenue to go through that. And there's no reason why you can't use the same information that you've put out on Facebook and put it in a blog, or vice versa, that you put in a blog and just blast it out through Facebook that way. So I do look at a previous agenda item with a sports complex and what's there. That's a great opportunity to start getting things out there to the community and try to do it in a gentle way, saying, hey, this is what's out there. It's a huge dollar amount. How do people feel about this, and get their reaction? So I think you have your direction, Joel, on 8D. So before we go to item 9, I'd like to actually jump down to announcements and future meetings, if that's okay, because I think everybody will leave after that, because we're going to go into closed session. So Joel, do you have any announcements or future meetings?
Just a couple quick ones. Park Commission tomorrow evening here at Town Hall. We have an incorporation oversight review meeting next week, Monday, February 4th at 5 p.m. We should be reviewing the final 3 sections of the packet. At that point, we'll kind of reach out to our consultant and our town attorneys to begin reviewing that documentation prior to our submission to the state. Fire Commission will be meeting on Tuesday, February 5th at 6 p.m. Beyond that, I don't know that we have any other real night meetings until the Town Board Planning Commission meeting. Well, Town Board on the 11th of February, and then Planning Commission Town Board on the 25th.
Okay. And I've spoken enough tonight, so I don't have any announcements. All right. So that takes us back to agenda item number 9. I need a motion to go into closed session.
So move.
Mark's given the motion, Dean's given the second. This is a roll call. So Mike?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Dean? Aye. Jackson, aye. We'll be conferring in the boardroom.